Class, welcome to part 3 of our Sound is Meaning lecture. We left off with rhyme, so let's get right back to it. There are many ways to rhyme, and each shows a different relationship between the words being rhymed and the concepts those words imply. First, we have exact rhyme, which means that the vowel sound is the same in both rhyming words. Do we need to know that? No. We need to know that it sounds exactly the same. Bat, cat, hat, sat, fat, letters, betters. Slant rhyme, near rhyme, or off rhyme. All of these words are interchangeable. These rhymes have the same consonant sounds and different vowels. How can a rhyme sound different? Well, they're almost rhymes, like moved and loved, or like moaned and mourned, or even born and brawn. There is a common saying that there is no rhyme with the word orange. There are plenty of slant rhymes, like orange and porridge, but they tend to leave the reader uneasy. They feel almost right. There is a sound relationship between the two words, but it is typically a dysfunctional relationship. Now, can you think of a slant rhyme for silver? Consonance is the proper term for a specific kind of slant rhyme that occurs when the rhymed words have the same consonants but different vowels. Pitter patter, drip drop. When we read the Emily Dickinson passage, we notice that there is a near rhyme between crumb and home. There is the echo of the round vowel sound and the M sound, although it rings a little hollow. There is the implication that perhaps this home isn't the comfort to the bird that it is to the speaker. It might start hinting at the strangeness of trying to domesticate wild animals. There are dozens of other uneasy connections you could make between these words, but remember that the first step is noticing the connection between the words. The fact that the poem is full of exact rhymes also draws attention to this passage. As for masculine and feminine rhymes, I don't especially care. It has to do with which syllables rhyme in a poem, but these divisions seem to be more for the sake of labeling than identifying features to enrich our analysis. This distinction seems to often take the place of making a real connection between rhyming words or patterns of rhyming in a poem. Of course, labeling features without analysis is the major danger of bringing up rhyme scheme of a poem. Often, students will identify a rhyme scheme and move on without discussing its significance. Remember, you do not have to bring up rhyme scheme. There are usually many other features to discuss in a poem, but if you bring it up, you better be ready to discuss why this feature is important to your understanding of the poem. Sometimes it's nice to consider the location of the rhyme and why it matters. End rhymes come at the end of a line of poetry. Here's an example from Poe's famous poem, Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. The rhymes tend to be heavier at the end of a line, especially in Annabel Lee. These strong rhymes show connections and relationships between entire lines of poetry. Even when the line is not end-stopped, it is visually more apparent. End rhymes tend to give readers a sense of completeness. We like it when things rhyme. This is why it is very important to consider the rhyme's general effect on the poem's tone. Heavy end rhymes, or short rhyming lines, often create a lighter, whimsical tone. Think Dr. Seuss. Think nursery rhymes. What is it that keeps Annabel Lee from being a light or whimsical poem? Or is it a light and whimsical poem? Internal rhymes, on the other hand, occur somewhere in the middle of the line, or across two lines. They are sometimes less obvious on the page, but seem very clear when they are read aloud, as in another of Poe's poems, The Raven. Internal rhymes create an echo effect in a poem, and they often show a connection between individual words more than entire lines of a poem. It might also be a way to divide a longer line of poetry, as in The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." What does the internal rhyme do for the pacing of the poem? Do the lines with internal rhyme read faster or slower? Of course, Poe used both internal and external rhyme in The Raven. You may have heard someone say that a poem has an A-B rhyme scheme before. That means that in the poem's first 4 lines, the end word of the first and third rhyme together, as do the second and fourth. Let's look at Shakespeare's 12th sonnet again. If we were to mark each line, the entire scheme reads like this: A-B, C-D, C-D, E-F, E-F, G-G. Remember, when asked to scan the rhyme scheme of a poem, make sure to scan the entire poem. Sonnet 12 is a very specific type of rhyme scheme. However, notice that there is a shift in the last 2 lines that signify a thematic or tonal shift of some sort. Of course, since this is a sonnet, this change in rhyme and rhetorical strategy is part of the tradition. However, what I notice most is the strained rhyme between herd and beard. Why is there a slight catch in the smooth naturalness of the rhyme scheme? What does that suggest about what the poem refers to in these lines in regards to the rest of the poem? You see, we notice these things in poems, and then we start asking questions. The better the questions we ask, the more interesting the answers we come up with might be. Of course, all elements of sound are working to create a feeling and a mood for the reader. Rhyming, of course, often lends to this mood, as we have discussed. However, typically, rhymes work in a couple ways. 1. They might show connections and relationships between words that we might not have previously considered. 2. Rhyming shows a form of completeness or rightness to a connection. That is why the word love is so often rhymed with heaven above, and less often with push and shove. When things rhyme, the reader feels happy and complete, and when rhymes are rather obvious or simple, they create a childlike tone. Now poets can use this childlike tone to devastating effect. Just take a look at the poems of Shel Silverstein or of Sylvia Plath. Both use a nursery rhyme tone and rhyme sensibility, but to completely opposite effects. Consider the effect of rhyme and meter on the subject matter of this poem, as I read it out loud. Little Libby. One more little spirit to heaven has flown, to dwell in that mansion above, where dear little angels together roam, in God's everlasting love. One little flower has withered and died, a bud near ready to bloom. Its life on earth is marked with pride. Oh, sad it should die so soon. Sweet little Libby, that precious flower, was a pride in her parents' home. They miss their little girl every hour, those friends that are left to mourn. Her sweet silvery voice no more is heard in the home where she once roamed. Her place is vacant around the hearth where her friends are mourning lone. They are mourning the loss of a little girl with black eyes and auburn hair. She was a treasure to them in this world, this beautiful child so fair. One morning in April, a short time ago, little Libby was active and gay. Her Savior called her. She had to go ere the close of that pleasant day. While eating dinner, this dear little child was choked on a piece of beef. Doctors came, tried their skill a while, but none could give relief. She was 10 years of age, I am told, and in school stood very high. Her little form now the earth enfolds, in her embrace it must ever lie. Her friends and schoolmates will not forget little Libby that is no more. She is waiting on the shining step to welcome home friends once more. Why do you think Little Libby is often considered one of the 10 worst published poems in the English language? First, a consistent, exact end-rhyme poem like this one sounds like a nursery rhyme, doesn't it? That can cause problems if a poet wants to sound serious. As I read the poem, did you notice how the tone clashed with the subject matter? Another thing that's wrong with this poem is that it doesn't mean to be funny, and yet the rhymes of certain words, beef and relief, make the situation of the poem seem laughable. The forced rhyme and meter also create an awkwardness when reading it. It is not beautiful enough for an elegy, and not good enough to be more than an unintentionally funny poem. So, to sum up, remember to ask questions and be inquisitive. Always. Some good general questions to ask while getting started would be, how does that poem sound? What does that sound do for the poem in terms of experience? What does the sound do to help you understand the poem? Does the sound echo the sense, or is it doing something surprising and strange? And always remember, sound and rhythm are music. Our everyday language has music. Poetry has music. And music with lyrics is poetry. Now go forth and read poems aloud. Listen for the elements of sound, and consider what they might signal.